The sun had barely risen over the quiet farmlands when Harun stepped into his fields, his worn boots sinking into the damp earth. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of soil and wheat. For Harun, mornings were the only peaceful part of the day. Once the sun climbed higher, so did his worries. His crops had failed twice in 3 years. The debts were piling up. The bank manager in the nearby town reminded him more often than he'd like. Some nights, Harun lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling of his small farmhouse, wondering how much longer he could hold on to the land his father had left him. That morning felt no different, until he heard it. A strange crackling sound echoed across the field, followed by a thud so heavy that the ground beneath him trembled. Birds burst from the trees in a frantic cloud. Harun froze. He looked up just in time to see smoke rising from the far end of his wheat field. His heart pounded. A plane. A small one. Without thinking about the damage it might have caused to his already fragile crop, Harun ran. As he approached, he saw the twisted metal of a small private aircraft half buried in his field. The nose was crushed. One wing was bent at an unnatural angle. Smoke curled into the sky. Ya Allah, he whispered under his breath. He hesitated for only a second before rushing toward the cockpit. The door was jammed. Through the cracked glass, he saw her. A woman. Blood streaked across her forehead, and her eyes were closed. She looked young, no older than 30. Her hands were still gripping the controls. Harun grabbed a heavy stone from the ground and smashed the side window. The glass shattered. Ignoring the sharp sting as shards cut into his palm, he reached inside and unlatched the door. "Madam, can you hear me?" he called. There was no response. Smoke thickened around them. Harun forced himself not to panic. He carefully unbuckled her seatbelt and lifted her out of the cockpit. She was lighter than he expected, but the weight of the moment made it feel like carrying the world. He carried her away from the wreckage and laid her gently on the soft earth. Her breathing was shallow. Harun pulled out his old phone and dialed emergency services. His voice trembled as he explained what had happened. Then he did something simple but powerful. He removed his scarf and pressed it gently against her bleeding forehead. "Stay with me," he whispered. Minutes felt like hours before the ambulance finally arrived. Paramedics rushed to her side, taking over with practiced urgency. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, one of them turned to Harun. "You saved her life," the paramedic said. "If you hadn't pulled her out." Harun nodded silently. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt tired. As the ambulance drove away, the reality of what had happened sank in. His crops were flattened where the plane had crashed. Weeks of hard work, gone in seconds. He stood alone in the field, staring at the damage. Later that evening, word spread through the village. A plane crash. A woman pilot. Some said she must be important to own a private aircraft. Harun didn't care about that. He cared about how he would explain this to the bank. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled up outside his farmhouse. It was the kind of vehicle you only saw on television. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. A man in a sharp suit stepped out, followed by another carrying a briefcase. "Are you Harun Ahmed?" the man asked politely. Harun wiped his hands on his kurta. "Yes. My name is Imran Qureshi. I represent Ms. Zara Khan." The name meant nothing to Harun. "She was the pilot of the aircraft that crashed in your field." Harun's eyes widened. "Is she? She survived," Imran said with a small smile. "Thanks to you." Relief washed over him. "She insisted on meeting the man who saved her life." Harun hesitated. "I only did what anyone would do." Imran exchanged a knowing glance with his colleague. Not everyone would have risked their life to save a stranger from a burning plane. Harun didn't respond. They handed him a card with a hospital address in the city. It was a private facility, one of the most expensive in the region. The next day, after borrowing his cousin's motorcycle, Harun made the long trip to the city. The hospital lobby was grand, with marble floors and chandeliers. Harun felt out of place in his simple clothes. A nurse guided him to a private room. When he entered, Zara Khan was sitting up in bed. A small bandage rested on her forehead. She looked healthier than he expected, her sharp eyes filled with curiosity. "So you're the farmer," she said softly. Harun nodded awkwardly. She studied him for a moment. "You pulled me out of the plane." "Yes. You didn't think about the explosion. Or the risk." He shrugged. "You were alive." Zara smiled faintly. "Do you know who I am?" He shook his head. "I own Khan Aviation Group. And half a dozen other companies." The words meant little to him. She laughed lightly. "I suppose that doesn't impress you." Harun shifted uncomfortably. "I'm glad you're safe. That's enough." For the first time in years, Zara felt something she rarely experienced: genuine humility. Most people treated her differently the moment they knew her status. They flattered her, sought favors, or asked for money. Harun had done none of that. "I visited your field," she said. "The crash destroyed a significant portion of your crops." He looked down. "It's okay. It was an accident." "No," she said firmly. "It was my accident." She gestured toward the window. "I was flying alone to clear my head. I've been under pressure." Her companies were worth millions. Investors demanded constant growth. Competitors circled like wolves. Zara carried the weight of thousands of employees on her shoulders. "But that doesn't excuse the damage I caused," she continued. "Tell me honestly, how much have you lost?" Harun hesitated. Pride battled necessity inside him. After a pause, he gave her a rough estimate. Zara didn't blink. "I'll pay for all the damages," she said. "And your outstanding loans." His eyes snapped up. "No, madam. Just the crops." She tilted her head. "Why refuse help?" "Because I don't want charity." Silence filled the room. Zara leaned back against her pillow, studying him more carefully than before. "This isn't charity," she said slowly. "It's responsibility." He didn't reply. "Then let's make it something else," she continued. "An investment." He frowned. "I've been looking to expand into sustainable agriculture. Organic farming. Direct farmer partnerships. But I need someone trustworthy on the ground." She held his gaze. "Work with me." Harun felt as if the world had tilted. "Me? Yes. You know the land. You understand the challenges farmers face. Help me build something better." He was silent for a long time. That night, back in his farmhouse, Harun couldn't sleep. He replayed the conversation again and again. Was this real? Or just another dream that would fade by morning? Days later, Zara visited the village herself. Not in a flashy convoy, but quietly. She walked through the fields with Harun, listening as he explained irrigation issues, rising fertilizer costs, middlemen exploitation. She asked questions. She took notes. The villagers watched in disbelief as the millionaire businesswoman sat on a wooden charpai, drinking tea with them. Over the next few months, change began. Zara cleared Harun's immediate crop losses, as promised. But more importantly, she invested in modern irrigation systems for the village. Solar-powered pumps replaced unreliable diesel ones. Training programs were organized to teach farmers sustainable practices. Harun became the bridge between Zara's corporate team and the farmers. At first, he doubted himself. He wasn't educated beyond high school. He had never stepped inside a boardroom before. But Zara saw something he didn't: integrity. During meetings in the city, when executives discussed profit margins, Harun would quietly remind them of the farmers' realities. "Growth is good," he once said, but not if it breaks the people growing the food. Zara watched the room fall silent. She realized she had almost forgotten the truth. What started as a tragic accident slowly transformed into a partnership built on respect. Within 2 years, the village's income had doubled. Young people who once planned to leave for the city chose to stay. Schools received better funding. Houses were repaired. Hope returned. And for the first time in a long while, Harun walked through his fields without feeling crushed by debt. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Zara stood beside him in the same field where her plane had crashed. "Strange," she said softly. "The worst day of my life led me here." Harun smiled faintly. "Sometimes what feels like destruction is just a different kind of beginning." She looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, when I was trapped in that cockpit, I remember thinking about everything I had built. The money. The power. None of it mattered in that moment." She turned to him. "What mattered was that a stranger ran toward danger to save me." Harun shrugged again, the same humble gesture. But this time, Zara understood it wasn't modesty. It was character. The struggling farmer who once feared losing his land had unknowingly planted a seed far more valuable than wheat. A seed of courage. A seed of partnership. And from the ashes of a broken plane, something extraordinary grew, not just profits or success, but purpose. Because sometimes, the real wealth isn't measured in millions. It's measured in the lives we choose to lift when we have nothing to gain.